pull off a three-peat in not just hockey, just all sports in general. But with the NHL, it hasn't been done since the 80s. I think in 81 through 84. Let me look that up for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think in any sport, because I don't think it's been done in the NFL. Well, I forgot.
Jason is watching us. The NFL was the closest one was New England Patriots. They went 0-3 and 0-4, but the Denver Broncos stopped them in 0-5.
Yeah, the Broncos, they went back to back.
I just looked it up. The last, four-peat actually was the New York Islanders from 1980 to 1983 seasons. So it's been forever since it's happened. Would have been historical, but I'm not a huge fan of dynasties in sports just because you get sick of watching the same thing over and over again. Like, I remember a few years ago, 2 years in a row, it was Detroit against Pittsburgh with them swapping the winner of the cup. And that was satisfying just because even though it was the same team, it was a different result each time. But even then, I hated the fact that it was the same teams 2 years in a row.
Right. Yeah, so just in terms of three-peat, so in each sport, so in the NBA, they, of course, Michael Jordan's Bulls had 2 three-peats in the 90s. The Kobe and Shaq Lakers in the early 2000s were the last three-peat there.
The Yankees were the last three-peat in baseball.
Yep, 98 through 2000. In the NFL, the Packers 65 through 67, including the first 2 Super Bowls.
In Brazil, the last three-peat was Sao Paulo Football Club from 2006 to 2008. That was the last three-peat in Brazil. They almost went for 4P. They came up short in the last week of the regular season, but that was the last three-peat in Brazil as well.
Can y'all guess who is the last college football team to have a three-peat?
Was it an SEC team? That's what I'm going to go with. Nope. Oh, wow.
The Hurricanes?
Nope. No. It is Army from 1940 to 1946.
Oh, but that's not fair. Army had a lot of reinforcements back then.
Yeah, and it was they had some prime athletes during that time. I can't name any off the top of my head, but there was a quote by, I think it was George Patton. Can't remember off the top of my head, but I want an elite soldier. I want a U.S. Army football player from West Point. Mm-hmm. And back then, they were just an absolutely phenomenal team from looking at the record books.
Right, because there's only 2 teams in FBS history to ever do it. Army and Minnesota in the 1934 to 1936. And of course, then, they voted it in their national title, so it doesn't really count, but still.
No,
it's very rare. Now, in FCS, North Dakota State and Appalachian State have done it. In basketball, only one team ever has done it, and that's UCLA from 67 to 73. They won 7 straight under John.
Is that men's or women's?
Men's. And women's, Tennessee actually has done it, 1996 to 98. But UConn since has had 2 different runs of three-peats.
I wanted to bring that up because that's something I did know.
Yeah, so that's the only time any of our teams have ever done it is the Lady Vols under Pat Summitt in the 90s.
And you love to see it. But anyways, it was, obviously a little disappointed in the playoffs given you're always rooting for your team. And I'm sure, Nick, you were hoping the Predators would have gone all the way. I was hoping Washington would have gone all the way. But things happen. You hate to see them, but it's the playoffs. It's some of the most exciting sports you can watch in whatever's on TV because so many legendary storylines come out of it. Looking at the bracket, I think the most exciting series out of all of them was New York and Pittsburgh, 2 teams I absolutely hate with a passion. But it was just such a brutal series going all the way to Game 7 that I couldn't not watch it.
Mm-hmm. Oh my god, watching a urinating tree and 5 Points vids during that series. There
Oh,
was
yeah.
reactions.
Oh, I love that channel. I love that channel.
Oh my god.
I'm excited for his recap of the entire playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a disastrous. Anytime you blow a 3-1 lead, it's brutal. I mean, I experienced that with the Braves the year before last against the Dodgers. At least we got to get back at them in last year's playoffs, but still, there's going to be a tough pill to swallow. Definitely, when it's on the topic of my Predators, I knew they weren't going to win this series. I was hoping they would at least be more competitive. What was just disappointing is the fact they were only really competitive in one game. I mean, they got just annihilated in game 1, 5-0. Well, they were down 5-0 in like 10 minutes, and I knew then that we really don't have much of a shot in this series. And then Connor Ingram comes in, gives us a shot in game 2, and then we come home and just they gave it a shot, but just they had nothing for this Avalanche team, and there's no shame in that. The Avalanche obviously the best team in the league this year. But, with the prospects of Philip Forsberg leaving, the future doesn't look bright, at least in the near term, for Nashville. I think we're about to enter into a rebuild, and it's going to be a while before we're anywhere close to where we were a couple of years ago.
How are you feeling about the Forsberg situation, by the way? You think they'll re-sign him?
No, I think they'll let him go. I think it's
really
because right now, you're the roster. I just don't think you're anywhere close to a playoff. Going on a deep playoff run. And you got to remember, too, we're about to get a new owner with Bill Haslam, and I feel like the direction's going to change here soon. So I think the Preds are going to kind of go into a little bit of a dark period here. But hopefully, because, I know the Avalanche a couple years ago, they were in a really bad spot, but they were able to rebuild over a couple of years, and they've got themselves into a good situation again.
The really sad thing about Colorado over the years is the last time they won the Cup was 2001. And for the past, I guess we can call it 5 years, they've been one of those teams where they're a solid pick to win the Cup, but they just fall apart at some point and choke. And it's depressing to watch for any team, regardless of who you support, because it's all this effort, dominance in the regular season, all just to end up with a bunch of nothing. Washington dealt with it for so long, and we had a 2-year window of acquiring Justin Williams, TJ Oshie. Those are the two biggest names, and we didn't close on the Cup. And it took the year where we were the most depressed for us to win the Cup. So Nashville needs to go through their depression where things seem really bad, can't get any worse, and just deal with that pessimism and ride it all the way to the top, because you can't go any further than rock bottom. Now, to be fair, Nashville is not at rock bottom, as Montreal placed last this year after going all the way to the Cup finals last year. So we'll see what happens with them. I give them a Stanley Cup in the next decade, but that's such a long period of time. The league will definitely change then, and I don't know what to expect.
No, and it's interesting, Dylan, that I feel like the DC sports fans are kind of used to have this high expectations and high disappointment, not only with the Capitals but with the Nationals. And also was interesting because I feel like, I don't know if I'm accurate on that, but I more on the baseball side, but also a little bit on hockey, is where they had their expectations low is where they got their highest points, their Stanley Cup trophy and the Commissioner trophy. I feel like they got both titles when they weren't as the high expectations that they were in previous years.
Yeah, it's like that with, to be honest, all DC Baltimore area sports. What was the last, like 2012, I think was the last Ravens Super Bowl, if I'm correct.
Correct, yeah. 20.
I remember watching that season being just whatever happens. I was scared for the team when we had to play the Patriots in the playoffs, but we pulled through.
And what about the Joe Flacco miracle throw? Can't get any better than that.
I have a framed picture of that, and it is one of my favorite pictures ever. But with the Nationals, no one expected them to make the World Series, and they ended up pulling through. The Orioles in the 80s, to be honest, were very dominant, so that was kind of expected. And the Ravens in the early 2000s were we still, as much as we argue about our football teams in the Rock Solid office, we can agree that the Ravens in the early 2000s had the best defense of all time in the NFL. And so there's been occasions where we expect results out of our teams and we get them. But when we don't expect them at our lowest points, they pull through and surprise us, which has been so much fun to watch over the past few years.
Yeah, I mean, that Ravens defense, I mean, just if you take a look at it, there's not many more defenses that I think are really comparable. The one that comes to mind immediately is like the 2013 Seahawks.
Oh, yeah.
That one was equally as dominant. 2014 Broncos defense. But it's been a while, truly, since we've seen a defense of that caliber.
It's been, and I remember playing Madden 01, and they were ranked the only 100 ranked overall defense in the entire game.
Yeah.
We've gone way off topic of hockey, though, but overall, the playoffs were fun. Looking forward to next season. There's going to be a lot of changes I'm worried about. First of all, when does the national ownership change go into effect?
National ownership. It goes into effect. Let me see. I'm going to look that up. I'm not sure when it officially goes here into effect, but I know they are finalizing the deal.
Either way, whether it goes into effect this year or sometime in the future, it's going to be a big change to the team. And one I'm worried about in particular, being a Capitals fan. Actually, there's a few things I wrote down. Obviously, Ovechkin has a shot at passing Gordie Howe for goals overall. He's 21 behind him. So that'll happen, I'm going to say, by Christmas this year. But on the more bleak side, I guess, Nick Backstrom, basically the goose to his Maverick, if we want to use a contemporary reference.
I just saw it this weekend, by the way.
It is fantastic.
It's phenomenal.
His hip has been messed up over the past few years, and he finally got surgery on it, and it's not looking good. So if Backstrom is done, then that's going to really mess up Ovechkin's passing Gretzky. And still dealing with Washington, even though he's not as big of an impact player compared to the Ovechkins, the Backstroms, the John Carlsons. Carl Hagelin sustained an eye injury in, I think it was like early March during practice. And that might be career ending too, because obviously to play hockey, you need eyes just because vision's everything. The puck's only so big. And as much as it sticks out, it's very hard to see if you're walking around or skating around with one eye. So he might be done too. And then the other one that I'm oddly care about, even though I hate the Penguins with a passion, Evgeny Malkin is a free agent as of, yesterday. The season's over. I think Pittsburgh is going to do whatever they can to keep Malkin and Crosby together. My biggest theory is they'd let Letang go because he's a free agent as well. But just the fact that this might have been their last season together has been absolutely wild to watch, because the NFL has, we'll call it Gronk and Tom Brady. The NBA had Kobe and Shaq. The NHL has had Malkin and Crosby since the early 2000s. They've been one of the best duos in the entire NHL. And the fact that it's at risk is very weird to watch.
Yeah, it feels like they've been playing together as long as I've been watching hockey. Because I've been watching hockey on at least a semi-basis since about 2010, 2011. So, yeah.
Ovechkin and Crosby started around the same time because Ovechkin's draft year, there was a lockout. So even though he was drafted the year before Crosby, their rookie seasons were technically the same, if I remember correctly. So just being able to, and forgot to mention, Malkin was drafted right after Ovechkin. Washington had number 1 pick. Pittsburgh had number 2. They were drafted back to back. And so watching those 3 players just grow into the massive talents as they are, it's been really something. And the fact that it might change, it's a changing league, and it's weird to watch.
Yeah. I think the one team I'm going to be most fascinated by next year, and they were my pick to win the Stanley Cup Finals this year to break their curse, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like, what does Toronto have to do? They have the most talent out of any team, it seems like, but they're stacked, but they just can't get out of their own way. Like, what else do they have to do?
Maybe they have to follow the recipe of their basketball city team and got a star player on a trade that feels like, nobody believes in him anymore. Like, that works for Toronto Raptors. They always seemed like they couldn't never get it done. They always were stopped by the Cavs. They had Lowry, they had other great players.
DeRozan for a long time.
Yeah, DeMar DeRozan, but they got the right player and it changed the franchise. They got the title. Maybe they should follow the recipe of their basketball team.
That's possible. I think the issue is just they're too focused on maintaining some of their higher contracts like Austin Matthews than acquiring new talent to maybe get them even further in the playoffs. Because don't get me wrong, you need to do whatever you can to keep Austin Matthews because he is a 1 in a million player that has just been absolutely fantastic to watch. But he's just not on a team that can close on a playoff win. And the really sad thing is, just to go through some of Matthews' accolades this year alone, he got the Hart Trophy, which is the MVP according to Pro Hockey Writers Association, the Ted Lindsay Award, which is the MVP according to players, and the Maurice Rocket Richard Trophy, which is most goals. He is easily the best player in the league right now, but Toronto just sucks.
Yeah. Well, now joining us, kind of filling out our quartet here from RSS, Jason Warwick. Jason, live from Louisville, Kentucky. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'd be doing a lot better if Austin Matthews had a Stanley Cup right now and not the Colorado Avalanche.
What's your beef with Colorado?
I don't really have a beef. I just want Austin Matthews to win. I feel so bad for him because they are literally cursed. They've been eliminated in the first round, Game 7, for 5 straight years now?
It's been painful to watch.
Yeah. The only beef that I really have with the Colorado Avalanche is Stan Kroenke. That's it.
That's the brutal part of it. He has 2 titles this year because he won with the Rams back in February, and now he's winning with the Avalanche. And Stan Kroenke is just a horrible person. Like the stuff he's done to
not me.
I mean, the stuff he's done to like rural landowners and how he screwed over his home city in St. Louis. And yeah, I mean, him and Steen Spanos really give each other a run for their money. And probably Dan Snyder's probably the worst owner in all of sports.
Jerry Reinsdorf is up there too, but that's
Howard Stern is in the Hall of Fame of bad owners.
Yeah, they can all go on the Mount Rushmore, but I don't want to take away from Dylan's hockey time. I'm excited to hear more about this. I've been listening in the Facebook stream.
All right, it's been an eventful playoffs. While we're on the subject of what teams need to do to rebuild, what do you think Chicago needs to do to get back to where they were so many years ago, Jason?
Where do I even begin, honestly?
Well, you fired Stan Bowman already. That's step one.
It is step one. I would say hire Coach Q again, but that's not going to happen. The Hawks hired a new coach. I believe it was today, and this guy, Luke Richardson, I think he's a Habs assistant right now. It shows how much I know about him. Anyway, I think he's a decent up-and-comer. But honestly, I think you have to trade Everybody. You have to have a fire sale. You got to trade Jonathan Taves. You have to trade Patrick Kane. You got to be able to – you have to be willing to part with those guys to be able to get back to where you want to be. And as heartbreaking as that is, I think those two have – especially those two, but various others as well have earned that, in their careers, especially those two. Those guys deserve to ride off into the sunset competing, not wasting away on a rebuild that is probably going to outlive them.
So there's 3 options for that. They could trade them. They could try to keep them until their contracts expire and maybe see what happens, get rid of some other players, and be less of an embarrassment than they already are. Or they can just retire right now. They have the accolades that players need to be considered Hall of Fame contenders. But Chicago's been so bad over the past few years, you almost hate to see them suffer.
I think if they decided to retire today, they would both be first ballot Hall of Famers in my view. But with that being said, like I said, I think what Chicago needs to do is really just trade them, and I think they've earned the right to ride off into the sunset competing. And so, as much as I will hate to see either of them on another team, I think both of them get traded to contenders in the next couple of years, and they'll bolster, these other teams to maybe take them to the next level. And it's almost, to Gus's point, it's almost like one of those guys would fit in perfectly in Toronto. That's the type of player that the Toronto Maple Leafs need to go after to try to put them over the top. Austin Matthews is probably the best American hockey player of a generation. He is, if he's not the best hockey player in the world right now, he's number 2. But he's not a magician. He can't do it by himself. And he has willed them to the playoffs. He has willed them to Game 7. But at some point, you have to have a little bit of help. And, I think that's the type of scenario I'd like to see both Taves and Kane go into and ride off into the sunset.
The issue with them potentially going somewhere where they could end their careers with a cup, look at Joe Thornton. He's bounced around a little bit over the years and was in Toronto because they looked like they stood a chance, and then they didn't. So a lot of these older players that have been around since I was in diapers are just kind of getting too slow for the sport in general. It's gotten so much faster over the past few years. The shots are harder. The goalies are quicker. There's a whole different breed of hockey player out there, and it's almost like they just don't fit in anymore.
I mean, with all due respect to Joe Thornton, a legend of the game, truly. He's like 42 years old. These guys are in their early 30s. There's a big difference between those guys right now, or even in a couple of years, and Joe Thornton going now. But that's, I get what you're saying, and I agree with you. But the time to trade those guys is now, while they still have value. And in terms of what Chicago needs to do, this fire sale needs to happen as soon as possible. And I think it begins in this offseason. I think that the first few dominoes will probably begin to fall this offseason, and the big dogs will probably fall at the deadline or maybe in next offseason.
And it's kind of like to expand my comparison, it's kind of like what the Spurs did with Kawhi Leonard. They saw Kawhi wasn't, engaged and couldn't be the player that he was 5 years ago, so he traded him for maybe the future. And then the Toronto Raptors, they got the player for the season that ended up being the champions. I think, for Jason's point, the Maple Leafs have to find that player that maybe is not performing well in the NHL, but still has like production value.
Part of the kind of upside of this, I don't remember Chicago's draft rankings, but I'd imagine they're pretty early on. So maybe you can get one of those rare mid to late round picks that send the team to the stratosphere. Just to use an example, Tom Brady was drafted incredibly late, and he is the greatest quarterback of all time. So there's all these sleepers full of the draft.
No, he's not.
Well, that's just your opinion, and we can talk about that another time.
I mean, it's also the opinion of a lot of defensive players like Bart Scott, but
fair enough. But the point is, a lot of really good players can come late in the draft. We can see what happens to Chicago. We can see what happens to Toronto. And maybe things will work out for them, but it's very unlikely given the team's history.
Yeah, so when it comes to the draft, so Chicago's first round pick, so they would have the 6th overall pick, but Columbus has it. So Chicago, I don't think it has a first round pick.
It was part of the Seth Jones trade.
Yeah.
Another trade that made no sense.
Yeah, so that's very, very unfortunate. Montreal has number 1, New Jersey's number 2, Arizona number 3, which, by the way, Arizona, I mean, how long are they even going to be out in Arizona?
That's another thing, actually.
Are they still playing at ASU?
They will be this season, and it's...
Why?
I have mixed feelings about that because, on one hand, my brother goes to Arizona State, so he's essentially going to have an NHL team right down the road from him, which is cool. However, that arena only seats not a lot of people. I think Thompson Bowling has more seats in it than whatever they're going to call the Arizona State arena.
I think it's like 5,000 people, right? Because because
Thompson has like
1,678.
It's pitiful. And tickets, it's been kind of memed among the NHL fan base, are extraordinarily and unnecessarily expensive. But it makes sense because it's such a limited supply. You want the cost to be up. But the Arizona Coyotes, nobody really cares. I hate to say it, but there's such a weak market that they might as well just make a college discount for Arizona State students because they will fill up that arena.
When you have an arena on a college campus that might be less filled than the Ice Bears playoffs this year, that's a problem when that team is in the NHL.
Yeah, it's like the Oakland A's having less attendance in their AAA team.
Maybe she's considering moving the team up north. Maybe
bring back the Nordics, bring back the Whalers.
Yeah,
that's one thing I've heard.
Quebec or Hartford. I mean, which one would we rather see? Because I love the Brass Bonanza. I kind of want to see that make a return.
The issue with changing Arizona out of their conference or their division, be more specific, it mess up the balance because there's I think 16 teams on each side now.
Put Detroit back in the West where they belong.
You could do that, but then it comes to balanced divisions. Like I'd imagine, let's say they bring back the Nordiques when if Arizona goes there, they'd be probably in the Atlantic Division, but that'd give it one extra team than the Metropolitan, and it'd mess things up for playoff rankings for that division in particular.
Yeah, you'd have to slide it either Detroit or let's see here NHL East.
But I would consider moving. Why not Montana or somewhere up north like there? Put a professional team there.
I think in the interior
for their 12 residents.
Well, the only two cities that would make any sense in that region, when you got Salt Lake City, and what about and here's a city that's rapidly growing, Boise, Idaho.
Yeah.
The one ideal city for hockey that I could think of off the top of my head is North Dakota. However, I think they're called the Fighting Hawks now. North Dakota college hockey is so popular that there's no point in bringing an NHL team in.
But or they could use I'll say, for example, Connecticut. They have such a UConn has such a powerful women's basketball program. They ended up having a WNBA team. So there's a path. I feel like North Dakota.
Yeah.
They had the Hartford Whalers for I don't remember how long. And that worked out, but Gary Bettman, I think, was still the commissioner at the time, just took him and sent him to, I think, Carolina. Because, yes.
There's no better time to bring back the Nordics than right now, though, considering that the zombie Nordics just won the cup.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Make hockey more Canadian.
Okay, what about Saskatchewan? Regina or Saskatoon, could they, sustain a team?
See, the thing about Canadian hockey is I've seen minor league Canadian hockey before. Like when I might have been like 11 or 12 playing at a tournament in Toronto. We went to see Niagara's equivalent to essentially the Knoxville Ice Bears League. And it is the most they only had like maybe 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 seats, but it is the loudest hockey game I've ever been to because they care about their little town or their little region of Canada so much that they basically don't need an NHL team because it'll take away from those markets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like Winnipeg, though, is kind of in that situation because Winnipeg, if you look at a map, there's not a lot around Winnipeg. It's just kind of a big city out in the middle of nowhere. But those fans, they show up with the whiteout, and
to be fair, that's most of Canada, though.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
if there's hockey, they will watch it.
Like Toronto, Hamilton, that area is pretty urban, but I guess that's really the only area of Canada that's like that.
And I just thought of this. The other problem with bringing the Nordiques back is it'd be in the same region as Montreal. Both are in Quebec. And so you'd be kind of stealing from probably the most passionate fan base in all of hockey, the Canadians. So Montreal would be losing money. Toronto's pretty low, so you might lose some of their fans. It's just a lot of you hate to poach fans when you reorganize the league.
Okay, let me ask though, how many of those Nordics fans are still bitter from when they left and don't care for the Habs or the Maple Leafs because they hated them when they had the Nordics and they're like rooting for Buffalo?
Those people would show up, but the younger fans who are only we'll say my age, I'm in my early 20s, they'll be more focused on watching Montreal because you got Carey Price, Shea Weber.
Oh, yeah. Watch them go straight to the number 1 draft pick.
And that just goes back to what I was saying earlier. You look at Matthews, you look at McDavid, all fantastic number 1 draft picks. They may be on crappy teams, but they are fun to watch.
All I'm saying is if you have kids in Quebec City, sure, they may be watching Montreal, they may be doing this, but when they have a team show up in their backyard, they're going to probably go if they're big hockey fans.
That's possible.
I wish that was a true thing in Brazil, but, it's not as much because, sometimes, people just follow the big team. They follow the capital team, but in America it's a little bit different. But
yeah,
I've
just pulled up a list of the top by population just because I was curious. So Quebec City is the 7th largest metro area in Canada because the top 6, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, Ottawa, Calgary, and Edmonton, they all have teams. Winnipeg and number 8 have a team. So Quebec would make sense. I didn't realize that Regina and Saskatoon were all the way down at 17 and 18. So they're both, neither one of them has 400,000 people. So I don't think Saskatchewan could support a team. After looking at this, there's also Halifax, Nova Scotia. I mean, there's not a team over in the Atlantic Maritimes, but I don't know. If
they have an AHL franchise, and I think they're doing pretty well. But again, you'd have to reorganize both the NHL and the AHL if you put a team there. So it'd just be a massive mess of reorganization.
Yeah, I think the easiest thing to do is if you're going to move a team like the Arizona Coyotes, move them to a city where they belong, like Quebec City, and then just shuffle teams, to the divisions farther west. Maybe it's putting the Wild in the farthest west division. I don't even know the division names anymore because they've all been changed. It's no longer just the Eastern and the Western Conference, but like it just maybe shuffling, teams that are in Mid America, even the Blackhawks. That's another team. The Predators, any team in Middle America could move to a more Western division to support that move. I think when it really comes down to it, they're already going to realign the divisions anyway because nobody has any idea what they're doing to begin with expansion. And then you put a team in a better market that's going to be able to get a lot more fans, a lot more money. It's just going to drive up value, in my view. And the Phoenix Coyotes or Arizona Coyotes or whatever they're called now, playing at this arena in Tempe on campus, that is just a sideshow that's just unbelievable for a professional sporting league at the highest level. This is supposed to be the best hockey league in the world. Why are you playing at a college campus with 5,000 seats?
It kind of worked out in the past because they used to play at Talking Stick Arena in downtown Phoenix, and Arizona State has their second biggest campus is in Phoenix, only like maybe a 15-20 minute drive from Tempe. And it was popular then. I'm sure it's the Coyotes, so they're not selling out like the Oilers or the Maple Leafs are. But it was popular despite the team's mediocrity. But that's only because they had the arena to do it. Now, if you do a college arena that only seats 5,000 or less, it's going to be very hard to sell those tickets because of prices and the fact that the Coyotes are not a good team.
Yeah, I just don't see how the Coyotes last for more than a couple more years out in Phoenix. So, like, you compare them to like Vegas or some of these other teams out in that region, like they are doing so much worse, and they're just not viable for the long term.
And again, Phoenix is the city that makes the least sense to have a hockey team. I mean, the heat is unbearable at times. I know hockey can the external weather does not play a factor in hockey. I mean, you can play in closed arenas, but you still feel like hockey should have the cold environment. I feel like.
Well, I mean, the thing about Phoenix too is it's such a haven for retirees as well. So, like, a lot of people in the Phoenix area, they have ties to other teams anyway. Like, you see this with like Cardinals games, you see this with the Suns, and where people will show up for opposing teams just because it's like Florida. That's why. That's why you have the. That's why you have That's why you have the preseason games in baseball in Arizona and Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Right. What would we think about maybe Houston or San Diego? Would either one of them make? Obviously, from a cultural and climate standpoint, that makes sense. But they would have the populations if they were to get into it.
I'll raise you a third option. I think Dallas would be an interesting market.
Dallas?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Stars exist.
Oh, right. Crap. My bad.
Oh, right. There's a
I mean, Houston?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Stars are so irrelevant. Like, they made the finals, but they've been so mediocre lately that you essentially forget that they exist.
I mean, they have a good crowd. I mean, I've been to one game and it was electric. It was a nice time. But I feel like Kansas City is like literally in middle America. They're teams are doing really well. Sporting KC was now on down, but it was one of the top teams in Major League Soccer. The Kansas City Chiefs. They won the Super Bowl a couple of years back. The Royals won the World Series twice the last decade. I feel like there will be a space for hockey, but I think Jason doesn't like that idea.
I feel like the Blues have the Missouri market on lock.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Blues just won the Stanley Cup a couple of years ago. They're a very historic team at this point, over 50 years in St. Louis. I I don't see KC really being able to butt their way into that market. I think Kansas City should get an NBA team. I think they should move the Kings from Sacramento back to Kansas City. But I don't think the NHL makes as much sense for Kansas City.
It's so perfectly even right now that any minor change to it would mess up years of trying to even things out. Because even before Vegas was established, things were a little messed up. They had to reorganize the league just to bring them in. And even with their inclusion, there was 31 teams. Things weren't great until Seattle showed up, giving even divisions, even conferences. Everything was fine.
Yeah, because I'm just trying to think of any other cities we have, because I feel like we've brought every potential city on the market that at least would make sense. Of course, we know Atlanta is a dead market. No one's ever going to show back up there ever again. I doubt Charlotte would make any sense for any team. I almost have to wonder too if Houston, San Diego would just end up being Atlanta again, kind of like what we're seeing in Phoenix. But it's weird because some warm markets are really good, like Tampa. We're seeing us doing amazing in that market, and it's quite.
How much of that is just because they're good though? Because if they're bad, are they still going to be drawing consistent good crowds? Because I'm not sure they will.
Well, because I remember the kind of running joke. This was just a rumor, but back when the Florida Panthers were bad, there was a deal with, I think it was Papa John's, where it's buy 3 large pizzas and a 2-liter, get 2 free tickets to a Panthers game. I can't confirm. Oh, it definitely is. Yeah. I can't confirm nor deny its legitimacy, but that's just how comically bad the Panthers used to be.
The thing I understand about the Panthers is, why is their arena next to a mall? Like, why is it out in the middle of the suburbs? Why are they not playing in the middle of Miami?
I mean, DC's arena is kind of a weird place, and you have Chinatown literally right next to it. So there's a whole massive street market right there. Fantastic place, by the way. On the opposite side, there's like a bunch of different federal buildings and museums. It's such an awkward position and very hard to get to, but the market works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, Chicago's arena is outside the city as well, like really far outside the city. Like if you show up and it's not a game day, you can like walk into a neighborhood. It's like in Green Bay where they have Lambeau Field in the middle of the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's one thing I think Nashville does really, really well. Like Bridgestone Arena being right next to Broadway, and you have the whole plaza leading to the Veterans Memorial Bridge heading across the Cumberland. Like and then that leads across to Nissan Stadium. I mean, just the whole thing. I think the way they have it set up is brilliant.
And it is going to be even better because they plan. I think they're going to plan like a baseball stadium in the near future. I think it works, but.
I mean, we'll see. I don't know if they have really enough room for that, but I'm sure they can make the room. Of course, they're going to build a new NFL stadium too. So I'm not sure exactly if they're building that on top of where Nissan Stadium is now, or if they're building it adjacent to the current site.
I think they'd have to build it into a new site because Nissan Stadium's in such a convenient location, like you were saying, that you can't tear it down and then build a new stadium without impacting the Titans season.
Right, because you'd have to go probably play at Vanderbilt again, or have them come over to Neyland, or something.
Although not against them playing at Neyland, that'd be pretty cool.
You have to find a place to put that team, and that's the first problem. Otherwise, you have to find a new place to put the stadium. And it's more convenient just to find a place to play than to find a new piece of land, especially in a city as condensed as Nashville. But at the same time, you don't want to give up that revenue of, having to play at Vanderbilt Stadium and having, 2/3 of your revenue. Plus you have to give X number to rent the stadium, 7 times a year. So that whole thing is it's curious to me for those reasons, but I think there are some viable options, but I don't think they're going to send them to Knoxville. I don't think they're going to go play in Neyland Stadium. I think,
yeah, because I'm about to say, because like when the Colts switched their domes, it was a whole different site, right? Because Lucas Oil Stadium was in a different spot than the RCA Dome.
Yeah, so the RCA Dome was built. It was built on what is now the expanded convention center. And the Lucas Oil Stadium site was like a big parking lot. The problem with Nashville is the entire city is already crammed together. Indianapolis had a little bit of room to expand. And there's also, you got the White River in Indianapolis, but the city is not built on the White River, whereas Nashville is cut clear in half by the river. And so you have a lot of those hoops to jump through as well, whereas Indianapolis is kind of just to the south of the White River.
Right. But Joe, definitely when it comes to Nashville, you're going to want to build it as close to downtown as you can, because you don't want to really build it out in like Murfreesboro or something, like, because who wants to go? There's nothing else to do out there because everything in Nashville is so in that tight condensed center.
I know some people that would be very unhappy with that statement.
I know.
Well, because everything's within walking distance from downtown. It's great.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, I know Stadium doesn't have like the greatest amenities, but like I don't feel like we should be like in any rush to replace it. I mean, outside of getting a dome.
I mean, now you have the Speedway area, which is now has also a soccer stadium, so maybe
it all works out.
Yeah.
Like when I was there this past February for the Stadium Series, things were absolutely convenient for everything. Nissan Stadium, again, not the best stadium, but they made it work for the occasion.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be very interesting to see exactly how they move forward about this. And because if you're going to do that and then potentially attempt to lure an MLB team in, that's going to be a lot happening at once.
I want to go ahead and go on record. I don't think that's going to happen.
No, I don't either.
I think Nashville residents, fans, supporters need to leave the Major League Baseball dream at the altar and just let it go, because it's not going to happen. I would bet a lot of money that it's not going to happen.
I mean,
Vegas is cities like Portland, Montreal, and Charlotte are all way more likely to get a team than Nashville.
I think Vegas has the number one.
Las Vegas also, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember last year, I think it was, you guys were still around. We were discussing rumors of the Orioles packing up, leaving Baltimore, and going to Nashville. Now, with that, the owners are going through some stuff, but they released a statement saying that they're not leaving, despite their beef between each other. And because Baltimore is such a historical team, they don't want to leave the city.
I have a question. So, obviously, Camden Yards is in pretty decent shape, but is the government going to try to seize the team through eminent domain?
Had to bring it up. I wasn't alive, but it still bothers me. Anyways,
that was unnecessary. I'm sorry, you didn't deserve.
I appreciate the joke, though.
But yeah,
going back to special event games like the Winter Classic, we talked about it before the show went live. Rumors of a special game between I'm just gonna assume the Arizona Coyotes, but just because they're the southernmost team in the Southwest, and I think the Toronto Maple Leafs, because Austin Matthews is from that area and he's one of the hottest stars in the league. Probably in Mexico City. Is this plausible?
Ooh, Mexico City.
Or just somewhere in Mexico, just to celebrate the culture.
I think the NHL feels the need to have this international game because they see the success the NFL, the NBA, and Major League Baseball had with all their international games. So I feel like the NHL see the need to have this game because then they'll see like they're kind of the a little bit back from the other three major leagues in America.
Plus, right now as well, too, the KHL is being so handicapped by the Russian-Ukraine war that they have this opportunity to expand the international foothold.
And I think it could work because the two teams in that region, the most dominant ones, I'd say are Vegas and, well, not dominant actually, but just when it comes to demographic, Vegas and Phoenix both have like literally Spanish speaking channels. So they have the big enough demographic of Spanish speaking population to draw viewers, but just a matter of live and in person in Mexico, could they do it?
I mean, I think you can do it as long as the diplomacy is there between the two countries. And you have a place to play in Mexico City Arena. It's a 22,000 seat arena. They host various, WrestleMania and concerts and whatnot. You can put a hockey rink in there, but without any permanent structures, though, to preserve ice, it's going to be really difficult to put hockey in an arena like that. And so while I think it's doable, I'm not sure it's going to be as economically feasible as another, going somewhere else and playing, even in Europe, like Scandinavia, Nordic Europe. Those types of places are the places that I think that the NHL should be going to be playing, preseason games, exhibition games. I think that's the market that you need to be going for more so than Mexico. I'm not sure that Mexicans even care that hockey exists, period. I mean, the best Mexican hockey player ever is Austin Matthews, and he's not even even Mexican. So his dad, I think, is Mexican, but that's it.
They probably only include the Spanish-speaking commentary for Vegas and Arizona just because it's the region. They do that for all of the sports. So maybe the demographic is big enough. I'm not sure. But it's going to be years down the line if they do this. Within Austin Matthews' career, maybe. I don't know if the Coyotes will still be a thing by the time they pull this off, so they'll have to draw in Vegas to do it against Toronto. Or maybe they won't even do Toronto at all. It'll be, well, Vegas and Phoenix or Arizona, I keep calling them Phoenix, is an option because, like I said, they have the two Spanish-speaking commentary teams. So this is all still on the table of discussion.
But again, I feel like the NHL see this is more like they have to do it, more they want to do it. So more because of the other leagues are doing it and they're having so much success. The Major League Baseball are discussing play in Paris because of the success of the London series.
I want to see them play in the Netherlands. I want to see Major League Baseball played in Amsterdam because baseball is terribly popular in the Netherlands, especially with the Caribbean Netherlands. Oh, you got all those good players, from all of the Dutch islands in the Caribbean. I think you could get a hell of a crowd in Amsterdam somewhere. Even if you have to, find a place to play in Amsterdam, whether they play at a Johan Cruyff Arena and just kind of put the baseball diamond in the middle of the soccer pitch, or you go and find one of their, permanent baseball stadiums that's not very big and just play it out there. I want to see them play in the Netherlands, dude. That would be awesome.
That's the thing about special event sports, though, where they're played not really where they belong. They somehow manage to make it work every time.
I mean, as from being the international member of this conversation, like being from Brazil, I mean, I would love to have the NFL. The NFL has to come to Brazil ASAP. I think there's a real, Brazil is the second largest international market in the NFL, only behind Mexico. I feel like Brazil deserves a shot hosting at least a preseason game. I feel like Brazil deserves. I know NHL is not worth it. Brazil will have the arena, but there's no popularity. Major League Baseball, maybe, but there's the stadium here is like a high A stadium, is not well developed. Even though there's really the Japanese influence in Major League in baseball here is high. There'll be some fans, and the NBA already came here. Remember they had a game in Rio. It was, I think, the first game LeBron as a Cavs when he came back in 2014.
If England is capable of hosting an NFL game, I think Brazil is, because you look at their
Just put
massive.
Cairo Santos there, and the stadium will be full.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll use the proper terms. If they can use a massive football stadium in England, whether it be Wembley or any of the other ones,
Yeah.
I've seen pictures of the massive football stadiums you have in Brazil.
Yeah.
They are no joke.
I'll say this though too: the new Tottenham Stadium, that they specifically have a football pitch there at all times, like underneath the soccer pitch. So and they have specifically built NFL press style boxes, because I think the NFL and their long game is they're going to try to get a team permanently in London. Is I think the long game.
And I feel like
that's possible.
Me and Nick already discussed, probably for, Maracanã in Rio will be the first option, more because of, the most famous stadium Brazil ever had. It hosts 2 World Cup finals. But for me, the pick will be Sao Paulo. Sao Paulo definitely the city that loves the NFL, loves the American culture. And Allianz Park, the Palmeiras Stadium, they have the grass there is not natural, is artificial grass, is artificial grass turf. They're used to hosting, like, they literally in the Paulista final, they literally have the everything for the Maroon 5, the concert. They have the stage for a concert literally behind the goal on the Paulista final for a concert on Tuesday, and they play a soccer game on a Sunday, 2 days before a concert. So if that was possible, they can host an NFL game.
I think the biggest motivation behind any of these international cities hosting a professional game is how well they do in the Olympics. Like, you look at China, they obviously had the resources to host both the summer and the winter Olympics in the past 20 years. And they've had NHL games in China. They have the NBA games in China. So it's possible to play over there. Now, morally, they probably shouldn't, given recent events. But what are other places? England, we literally just talked about. France can probably pull off an NHL game or an NFL game.
Tokyo.
The New York Yankees.
Tokyo. I'd love to see a hockey game in Tokyo. They definitely the Tokyo Dome is one of the most interesting built arenas, I think, in the entire world. So if you can put literally any sport in there, it will draw.
I remember the Colts played the Falcons in the Tokyo Dome. It's been probably 15, 20 years ago at this point, but they played a preseason game over there. It's wild.
Yeah. It doesn't matter if it's a legitimate game, a preseason game, or whatever. Just do something cool, because that's what makes sports exciting.
Yeah, so Falcons Colts played in 2005 was when that game happened. There's actually been 13 NFL games in the Tokyo Dome. I didn't know this, but this was back in the 90s. And also too, now NASCAR went to Japan as well back in the 90s a couple of times. They went and raced at Suzuka.
For Indy car race went to Brazil in Sao Paulo twice, and it was huge. It was very popular. I really wish they could have come back to do the Sao Paulo Indy 500. That was, I think it was 300. It was really cool. It was, I remember listening to the American National Anthem and thinking about how awesome that was to host that event in Sao Paulo. A lot of people complain, because the race has to be delayed from Sunday to Monday because of the rain. And then part of the racetrack was literally, one of the vital highways in Sao Paulo. So people weren't happy about it, but I don't care. Having all the stars, Helio Castroneves, Tony Canas, Scott Dixon, all those, and listening to the race, the sound of the engine, that was amazing.
Right. And then one more hockey point I did want to cover. Obviously, the season's over. Awards have been handed out. I have a few that I wrote down that stick out in particular. We talked about Austin Matthews getting both MVP awards. The Vezina for best goalie has been Jason, and we've talked about it for months on Rock Solid Sports, figuring out who was going to get, because you have Vasilevsky, you have Igor Shesterkin. I'd say those were the two biggest contenders that we talked with. Now, Igor for the New York Rangers ended up getting it. And even though the Rangers only made it to, actually, they made it to the conference finals, there's no shame in that because Igor is a fantastic goalie. He had massive skates to fill once Heinrich Lundqvist left, and he did a good job at it. The other one I want to talk about, well, Colorado won the cup, but Cale Makar won playoff MVP, the Conn Smythe, the Norris Trophy, best defenseman, and again, the Stanley Cup, all at the age of 23. So it's just showing you how much of a fantastic team Colorado's been. And the last one, well, a little more wholesome. We've also talked about a little on Rock Solid. Carey Price took the majority of the year off, the Montreal's goalie, to deal with addiction issues, injury rehab, and just mental health problems, which completely understandable. You just get burnt out. He's been on top as one of the greatest goalies of all time. It really burns you out. And the fact that he took time off, came back for a little bit. Sure, Montreal ended up in last place, but that got him the Masterson Trophy for perseverance. And just hats off to him for coming back and be able to pull off just a few games. Very minor, but such a big step for him.
Yeah, so definitely congratulations to all of them. And it feels like, you know, the Avalanche are going to be a contender for years to come. I know they're the favorites again next year, according to Vegas. I'm just curious to see who's going to be able to challenge them.
All right, let's think about that. New York seems like a reasonable contender because you just saw them make it all the way to the semis, only to lose to Tampa in 6 games. Florida, I think, was just a rare occasion of a team being oddly good, like Vegas was a few years ago. Carolina, I think, is reasonable from the East. And, well, everyone says Toronto's year is this year. So we'll throw their name in the ring too, but don't expect anything from them.
Yeah, I'm definitely never picking them again to win the Stanley Cup. I probably jinxed them.
If you put money on them, though, it will be a massive win for your wallet.
Yeah, I almost like I feel like at this point, like when I get asked who's going to win the NASCAR race this week, I pick Tyler Reddick because I'm like, they got to win eventually, right? It's like the same thing with Toronto; they got to win eventually. So, yeah. Anyway, though, I guess we'll kind of wrap up the hockey discussion there.
Yep.
Shout out to my friend Miguel Ribeiro here in Americana, São Paulo, Brazil. He has a bar here. He's very popular. Hopefully one day you guys can come. He also sings country music, but and I appreciate you, Dylan.
Any opportunity for Dylan to wear his boots.
Oh, yeah.
Boots. Before you go, Dylan, I do want to ask you because the next topic they're going to bring up here, Ole Miss won the College World Series. I know you were in campus this past season, of course, with the Vols, falling to Notre Dame. Just what is your just perspective on the baseball team this year and how everything ended?
So the Vols baseball team is the running joke in my family is they're the baseball team in orange that I can be proud of because the Orioles haven't been good since 1983. Now, as exciting as the baseball team was, they did the typical Tennessee thing of raising everyone's hopes so high, winning the SEC championship, only to just throw it all away, which you hate to see. But despite the fact the season ended in this disappointment, you can't just throw away the whole season. This is probably the most exciting Tennessee sport on campus through fall, winter, and spring. So celebrate it. It's been great. And we'll see what happens next year. Hopefully things can get better. The only step we can go from here is winning the national championship. And I hope that happens, well, within however long it takes.
Do you know, I bet, love that result, Lane Kiffin. He is
Oh, he has been obnoxious on Twitter for the past 2 days, talking about taking Jello shots and.
How about Mike Bianco though? That dude is 2 seconds from being fired. They are the last team to sneak into the tournament. Seriously,
Yeah.
There was a huge worry in Louisville, Kentucky, that Dan McDonnell, the Louisville Cardinals head coach, would be going back to Ole Miss, where he came from, to be the next head coach there because they were going to fire Mike Bianco. And then he goes around and says, "Oh, you think you're going to fire me? Hold this beer. Watch this." And then they went around and they went and turned around. They went to Miami and won the Miami Regional. Then they went to Hattiesburg into hostile territory, and they swept USM. And then they went to Omaha and just dominated everybody. Again, this is what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago when I went on this show and I said that those fundamentally sound teams, the nuisance teams, were going to be the hardest to beat. Ole Miss was a nuisance team, and they had a couple of pitchers who put on a hell of a performance. And those two things in conjunction, you're going to win a national championship.
Yeah, it's just insane because I know when we played them, because that was really the series where this Falls team kind of jumped on the map because Ole Miss was number 1 at the time. It's just insane how Ole Miss, they were number 1 really to begin the season, and they fell off so hard, but then they kind of circled back around. And really just the way this whole playoffs really played off, because Oklahoma also was not a team that was a nationally ranked team here. They were not one of the top 16 seeds. And it was just insane how just crazy this college baseball postseason was.
Again, the Vols did fantastic, and they conquered the SEC. The only thing left to do to establish Tony Vitello as one of the greatest coaches in Tennessee history is that national championship.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, Tony Vitello still has the same number of national championships as Dave Van Horn.
That's reasonable.
Yeah. I mean, that's the one that, because I didn't really watch any of the College World Series because I just couldn't bring myself to watch any of it. But I was just glad to hear that Arkansas lost. So their fans still have 0 national championships, despite them acting like they are the arbiters of college baseball. Now they got to watch Ole Miss celebrate a national title, so that's funny to me.
Love to see it.
And it was the first ever Ole Miss national title in all sports, right?
Well, at least in the modern era. I think they won a national championship in football in like 1960, if I'm not mistaken. I think they have one in football, but it was a long time ago. Yeah, so they claim one. They actually claim 3 in 1959, 1960, 1962 in football. Granted, those were really controversial because this was before segregation. Did they actually win those? So, yeah. But they haven't won one in a modern era.
And in baseball was their first one ever.
Baseball was the first one.
And as Jason, put it out, the coach was, close to being fired. Now I guess he's gonna stay. Now more, maybe not, but I feel like he now has his legacy.
You can't fire him now.
Yeah.
You know who I feel bad for though? Mississippi State. You win your title, and now just a year later you have to watch your arch rival win it. So you can't even enjoy yours for more than a year.
That reminds me of basketball about 10 years ago in the state of Kentucky.
Oh, yeah, because Kentucky won it and then Louisville won it. Even though it isn't recognized anymore, Louisville still won it.
Just to bring back hockey one more time, that reminds me of when Pittsburgh won the back-to-backs, followed by Washington winning it.
I just want to go back really quickly. You remember, Dylan, when you mentioned the 2 back-to-back Stanley Cup finals between Pittsburgh and Detroit?
Yeah.
I just want it to be known. I think it is comical that Marian Hossa lost both of those.
And look at Corey Perry; he had the same problem.
Yeah, well, Corey Perry's on the terrorist list, so I hope he loses to the end of time.
We'll see if he gets one. He's the Toronto Maple Leafs of players.
And Jason, I think I saw from you the banner from the 2013 Louisville basketball team. I think it's still like still hangs on just now, not in the arena, but it's very close, right? I think I saw
Yeah,
from.
so there's a bar across the street from the arena. I don't think it's up now, but it definitely was hanging up on the face of the building across the street from the arena. And if I can find it real quick, I'll pull it up on my phone and I'll show it to our Facebook watchers here. But it was hilarious. This bar just put it up on the face of their building and just left it there.
Yeah, that's so not the whole idea of revoking championships is so stupid because like everyone remembers you won. Like everyone remembers that you won.
Yeah.
I don't care what.
Don't
you
tell
did.
that to Kentucky fans.
Well, Kentucky fans can put their hands in the sand on anything. I mean, these are the people that have to live with the fact that they've only beaten Tennessee 4 times in the last 40 years of football.
Oh, come on. No.
Yeah, you can barely make it out.
Yeah, I know. Hold on.
I
There we
can
go.
you know.
There you go.
Yeah,
That's difficult.
Love it. Love
if
it.
you are a Kentucky fan though, like you do have a reason to forget a lot because you do have to kind of. It is easy to forget that you did lose a game last year where you had the ball for 47 minutes in a game, that you in your best sport that you have a losing record in the last 10 games against Rick Barnes, that even in your best sport you're still being owned by Tennessee. So it's a tough life. It's easy to forget if you're a Kentucky fan, especially when you have to play in a supermarket.
And Kentucky football is so not on campus. It doesn't feel. It feels weird. It's in the middle. I feel like in the middle of nowhere. I remember when there. It doesn't have the same atmosphere as Neyland State. It's not even remotely close.
Oh no.
No, their campus is just kind of strewn out. But I'll tell you what, out of all the bad things I say about the Supermarket Stadium, one of my best memories is there, and I'm looking at it on my wall right now. So hold on.
Yeah. Yeah, because you went up there last year with the Neyland North Stadium, North shirt. Oh no, that's when Louisville won. Yeah, I think we lost your audio, Jason.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
For those that didn't see, he was wearing a Louisville hockey shirt, so respect.
Jason, I think you're on mute, but I think you were saying something about that moment.
Yeah, so that was when I was coaching high school football. We won a state championship at the Supermarket Stadium, and I'll tell you what, I'm undefeated there. I have never lost a game at that stadium. Between Louisville state championship and Tennessee, I believe I am. Let's see, I think I'm 3-0 in that stadium.
I'm 0-1 in that stadium. I've only been there once.
Oh,
but then again, that was 2017, as year where we didn't win an SEC game, and we had Jared Garrett, the number 2, the quarterback that will not be mentioned.
That guy.
Yeah.
And I'm undefeated at Capital One Arena. I've played like 5 games on Capital's ice and never lost any of them. Scored in all of them too, I'd like to emphasize.
No assists?
I have a few under my belt, but you remember the goals, because assists, you can have a goal without an assist, but you can't have an assist without a goal. I think the saying goes.
Yeah. So, Ole Miss College World Series champions. Just a few quick like American topics. NBA draft was passed Thursday. I think the thing that I'm most interested in is why did Kennedy Chandler fall to the second round? The 38th overall pick. He goes to his hometown Grizzlies. I'll be curious to see what his role ends up being on that team, because obviously John Morant is going to be the main point guard. What exactly is his role there? Pablo Banchero is the number 1 overall pick. I feel like we were talking about this last week. How it just feels like the NBA draft isn't as big as it used to be, just because because of the ones and dones. I feel like these players don't get a chance to really become stars at that college level. That really makes the NBA draft hype.
Because of this problem, I think he's going to spend some time in the G League just developing more and more, because he's a talented player, but he's not at his best, if that makes sense.
But but I appreciate Jason and Dylan joining our podcast. Truly appreciate you guys.
I was happy to talk hockey.
You're killing it on Louisville ESPN. I always try to listen to catch you, but congratulations on your being there. I know how hard it is to get there.
Well, I appreciate that, Gus. And you are in luck. The Diener Show on ESPN Louisville is podcasted. That's one of my job duties. I have to upload it to the podcast website every day. All 3 hours are on podcasts on Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud and Spotify, and so we're always on there. So if you want to listen, I can make sure that happens.
Yeah, go check them out, man. Those guys are funny.
Diener and Blankenbaker are awesome. I couldn't have asked for a better show to be on.
Yeah. All right, and also to you, Dylan, thank you so much for coming on. I know you said you're going to take a little bit of a reprieve now that hockey is over.
And I'm embracing Margaritaville right now. I'm on full vacation mode. Just going to sit on the porch, watch baseball, and relax. Once the NHL draft comes around, I'll be back on the grind, and I'll kind of continue this tradition if you guys are okay with it. 3 months' time, once the NHL season starts up, maybe after the preseason, how about I come back and we preview the season?
Oh, let's do it. We'll have to.
Just make sure you drink some margaritas first. This was fun.
We'll see what happens.
Just don't forget the Dallas Stars exist next time.
We have to have a podcast where we bring traditional drinks from our area, and we'll have caipirinhas for me. I'll bring some caipirinhas because
we'll do a fun episode for that at some point. I'd happily be part of that. And
craft beer for Chattanooga. Well, I mean, I guess I could do moonshine, but
I have the official drink of the Arizona Coyotes.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks
for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, see you in 3 months.
All right. And that was Dylan Becker and Jason Wyrick, colleagues of ours, always colleagues of ours, even though we're no longer at WTK. Definitely check out their endeavors. All right. So
I want to talk MLB because, and I want, the topic you bring up was Freddie Freeman coming back to Atlanta. I feel like it was the most emotional comeback from a player I ever seen. I was in goosebumps. I couldn't believe how emotional it was for him. I almost cried seeing his press conference.
Oh my God, that was hard to watch. So
that was hard.
It was so hard. I mean, just all those years. I mean, since I was a little kid, he was a mainstay of our team, and you can tell he didn't want to leave. Like his agent screwed that up super hard. He should have never left Atlanta. But people weren't talking, and
but I feel like he, at the end of the day, he's a professional baseball player. He has to at first prioritize where he finds the best way to monetize his abilities, and the Dodgers were the team that could provide. But he will never forget the amount of love that the Braves fans show him, and how he was there for the bad times, and he was there at the end at the best of times.
Right. I mean, and plus, even though it's sad that he did leave, at least he left with a ring. At least he left on a championship. It's a storybook ending, and at least there's definitely no regrets. I mean, we won a title. We won a championship with Freddie Freeman, and he's going to be a great no matter what. And honestly, I still want us to build a statue of him. I don't care that he's playing for the Dodgers right now. Like, who gives it? Like, who cares? He will always be an Atlanta Brave first. So it's like how LeBron is always going to be a Cleveland Cavalier first. Or Peyton Manning will be a Colt first.
Yeah, and I wish there was more, kind of this player fans appreciation and emotion in Brazil. I miss that. I haven't seen probably in a few the last few years any player that has played for a team and come back and be appreciated and felt this appreciation like Freddie Freeman to Atlanta. I really wish this kind of two-way street. The fans appreciating him for what he did, even though he's an opposing team, and Freddie Freeman still feels emotional coming back.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the best aspects of American sports is how fans really get attached to these players. And, it's just how you're always seen as one of us. Like, when I see a Vol, like, I think about all the Vol fans who are watching the Celtics rooting for them just because of Grant Williams. And how, like, that was the sole reason, but that's because we always see Grant Williams as our guy.
Yeah, I'm trying to think probably maybe the example is like Felipe Melo, even though he's still Fluminense, Palmeiras fans will always appreciate him. Maybe Daverson, then now he's leaving Palmeiras to go for another team. Palmeiras fans will always appreciate him because he scored the winning winning goal of the Libertadores final. Maybe Romarinho when he come back to Brazil, I guess he's not gonna play for Palmeiras because he hates him. But if he plays for another team, Corinthians fans will always appreciate him. But it's kind of hard because but seeing the way Freddie Freeman, you know, I just felt emotional with him as well, and I haven't felt that in a long time. Seeing this, genuine appreciation of a player, and because I remember when the Braves were not good back in maybe 2014, 2015, and he was, delivering good baseball.
Yeah, he was the lone bright spot, and the Braves before the early '90s were kind of like that. When you look at guys like Phil Nico in the past or like a Hank Aaron, they played on some horrible Braves teams. They didn't do much of anything until 1991, and then they went on a great run that year, went to the World Series, and from there they've been consistently a playoff team. They've been winning the NL East a ton because they won the NL East for 14 straight years from 91 to 2005, and now they've won it for the past 3 years. And I even in the bad years of the 80s and the 70s, like they were still amazing players who just didn't have any other support. Like it's kind of like when you see like Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani on the Angels. And that's something else we should bring up. Well, did you see that brawl between the Angels?
Oh, I saw that. And the best thing was a guy was literally, at one of those seats that's like by home plate, and he filmed that on an angle that I just couldn't believe it.
I know what an incredible brawl that was.
And Shohei Ohtani was just Sam. He was just, try to stop the brawl, but it was. I feel like because the Mariners are so owned by the Angels recently that they just couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah, the Mariners as an organization, they haven't made the playoffs in over 20 years. They have one of the longest playoff droughts out of any team, and not named the Sacramento Kings. It's you got to have an edge to that. But
and both teams had good momentum in the early 2000s, but then they couldn't capitalize on that.
Oh, absolutely. The Angels have a lot less of an excuse considering the talent they have. I can't believe they're going to have 2 generational players and they're going to waste both of them.
Oh yeah, that's crazy. Waste not one but 2 players that were like mind blowing talent in different positions. Like one is an amazing pitcher and is a good hitter. One is a power hitter, and both of them are probably not gonna go to another playoff for a long time.
Absolutely. Just to finalize the American topics before we switch over to Brazil, NASCAR raced in Nashville yesterday. I thought it was a really, really good race. It was disjointed, though, because of weather, but NASCAR can't control that. Chase Elliott ends up being the winner there, his second of the year, both on concrete tracks. There's not any more concrete tracks the rest of the season, but for whatever reason, that team was just really good on that type of track this season. All right.
Moving on to Brazil. First of all, I just saw that and just surprised that Tucker Carlson, for all people, is in Rio. I really want to find out why is it here. You know, Brazilian CPAC already happened. It was here, actually, nearby Americana. Was in Campinas. I feel like was
there's a Brazilian CPAC.
Yeah, there's a Brazilian CPAC.
That is interesting.
And it was not long ago. I feel like it was. I think it was. Let me check. It was not long, but it was close by. It was close by. It was in. Yeah, it was 3 weeks ago in Campinas. So it was really close by. But the panelists weren't good. They were no good. Bolsonaro did not come. Only I think one Bolsonaro son, which is a congressman, went, and there was a lot of like wannabe conservative journalists and commentators. But when I saw the lineup, I wasn't impressed. It didn't feel like worth my time. But
I'm very curious. You know what they were. I wonder if how much they discussed America in our recent developments over the past couple of days, because it has been an absolute tire fire up here recently.
No, I know. Yeah, I know. And it's so funny that I know we're deviating from sport, but I gotta talk to you about this. But because the right wing in Brazil, I was listening on the radio, was using the same arguments as the left wing in America. Both delegitimize Supreme Court, say that they're not representing the say of the voter, the say of the people. They're deciding on their own based on their ideology. And it was like I was listening to right wing radio station in Brazil, and I was like, this is literally the same point of left wing in America about the Supreme Court decisions. That's so crazy about it.
So what is the left wing in Brazil saying then?
I feel like about the about Roe v. Wade there. I thought there was gonna be more discussion about it. Just saying that probably about the same argument like the human rights kind of thing, like the there should be more decisions up to the women. A lot of pro-choice people talking about it, and it was interesting. On the same weekend, a famous soap opera actress was exposed, not exposed, but unfortunately she was like a journalist exposing a story that she was raped and had to give and wanted to give the babe up to adoption, and the story was leaked, and there was brought a whole argument about kind of like this abortion as well, if what women should do, and that. But at the end of the day, I don't want to. I feel like that for me it was just interesting that the right wing in Brazil and the left wing in America both hate the Supreme Court. I know for its different decisions, but it's just weird to me.
That is very, very interesting, and it just shows really how further right politics are in America versus other countries. In terms of this idea, and of course, it's all relative speaking. But I don't know exactly where we're gonna go from here. Of course, there's been a lot of big decisions over the past week. Today there's a big decision about school prayer. There was a football coach in Washington who was privately praying on his own. He wasn't like forcing anyone to pray with him or whatever. And the school fired him over it because he was like, "You are a school employee, you can't do that." But the courts, came out today and said, "Yeah, he can do that." Which, honestly, I don't have that big of an issue with. As long as it isn't the school itself forcing people to do it, I think individual employees should be able to do it. I mean, that's the First Amendment, and it goes back to a previous decision where, you don't leave your free speech at the door when you go to school. But when it comes to this Dobbs v. Jackson decision, I don't know, because there's two ways to look at it. One, if you look at the original text of the Constitution, yes, it doesn't mention abortion, but the whole idea of Roe v. Wade is this idea of substantive due process, and substantive due process essentially is the idea that there are certain rights that are not enumerated in the Constitution that do exist, that or should exist, that line up with the ideas of freedom in the United States. And in the 1973 Roe v. Wade decision, they decided that, at least those justices then said, that abortion was one of those rights, that it fell underneath a medical privacy that had been established in Griswold v. Connecticut. And these justices, now with Dobbs v. Jackson, said that was an overreach, and now it's been taken back to the states. So obviously in about half the states it's still going to be legal. In the other half of the states it's not going to be legal. Which it certainly is an interesting decision. I'm curious to see if we will see this be applied to other things and those things be overturned.
And that's why it's so different from Brazil. In Brazil, it's all centralized in Brasilia, all decision. If an abortion, if ever comes legal, which I think it will not ever, even though there's still the rape, if the mother health is at risk, or incest, there's legal. But because even the left in Brazil, Lula, which is the top candidate right now on the polls in the left, he won't even touch it. He won't even touch it, the subject. Dilma touched it a little bit. I remember 2010 election. That was when her polls went down. And now PT knows, the left party, they know they can touch the subject, because Brazil is such a religious country. Not only Catholic, but now evangelicals are on an extreme rise from like 2% in the 1970s, from like 35, probably 35, 38% of the population now. So
Right.
Lula is not going to even touch on the subject.
I mean, it's really because I didn't realize just how much more liberal we were as a country on abortion versus most countries. I mean, even most of Europe, like outside like the UK, which is 24 weeks. Like you look at like France and Germany and those places, a lot of those are like 12 to 16 weeks, like across much of Western Europe. And even in a state like I believe not Georgia, but I know like Virginia, for example, they're looking at like 15 weeks. I want to say I think Florida is 15 weeks too. Those are more liberal policies than what you see in a lot of European countries. So it's, and obviously California, New York, those places, it sounds like they're about to go just straight to no limits whatsoever. It's a, I don't know, this is a hot topic issue. I've not posted anything. I have ducked.
The only post I posted was like more to kind of say that happened for Brazilian people to know. That's the only thing I said. I was like, wow, what a decision. I mean, that's what the only thing I said was I've been pro-life and I've been pro-choice. I'm really hard. Even libertarian, YouTubers that I follow, they don't have an opinion on it. It's so hard. That's why it's the kind of thing that, it's because at the end, a lot of people that I see opinions harsh are a lot on morals and a lot on, values. And each person is dealing with each hard issue and dealing with their own, struggles. That's why it's so hard to judge.
Yeah, I've been trying to listen to a bunch of different perspectives on this, both people who are pro-choice, people who are pro-life, and it's just and the gulf between them is just, I don't think it's ever going to be reconcilable. I don't think we're ever going to be able to get to any type of consensus as a country. Which I mean, which I guess for some people, this is why this decision isn't a bad thing, because we're going to be living a true federalist state where like you have some states that are going to have complete legalized abortion. You're going to have some states where that completely ban it. So the only question is now, are we ever going to see a scenario where either party gets into enough control where they can either completely legalize it nationwide or completely ban it nationwide? And that's really what I think could send this issue over the edge and cause real issues, is if either party tries one extreme or the other. I mean, if we're going to be in this particular scenario, I kind of just want to leave it at the states at this point. I think it would be a mistake for either party to go one way or the other, because the other half of the country will be enraged to the point where I don't know what will happen. Because I mean, literally, this is the most polarizing issue in American politics. You either are one way or the other. I mean, there's a kind of a middle point to an extent in terms of like, okay, I'm for it to up to a certain point, and in certain situations. But I just it's gonna be hard to ever come to any type of national consensus on this because I feel like we live in two very different countries at this point, two different frames of mind, a sense, and it's so different.
Yeah, that's my answer to you. I feel like there's a big difference between Brazil and the United States because Bolsonaro and Lula, for me, they're basically the same. That's a big difference. If Biden and Trump run, they are very different. But Lula and Bolsonaro, they're just both populist, both have a lot of like kind of like increase the power of the government ideas. The only difference is one is like a nationalist kind of lot minded on the military, and the other one is more like a union, kind of like more like the liberal groups, the LGBTQ, and more like getting the minorities. But at the core principle, they're both the same. And in the Supreme Court in Brazil also is divided on that because in November 2016, Judge Roberto Barroso said that stop the having an abortion up until the third month is not a crime. But recently he said that there's no mood to discuss abortion in the Supreme Court in Brazil.
Yeah, and I wonder if in retrospect, if the court should have never taken it up in the first place. Because I know when they did, that's when the issue really became a hot topic issue in America. Because it really wasn't, it was controversial, but it really became extraordinarily controversial after they ruled on Roe v. Wade to begin with. So, and because remember, the Supreme Court in America is not supposed to be a legislative body. They're only supposed to interpret law. That's all they're supposed to do. They're not supposed to make new law. And I do feel like, to an extent, the court has been enabled to make law.
They're just following the path of the Brazilian Supreme Court because that's the Brazilian Supreme Court. That's all they ever do. They just legislate without being the legislative body.
It's supposed to happen because they are not held. They can't be held responsible to the voter because the voters can't vote for the justices.
Yeah.
I mean, the only reason we're in this situation is because you had a previous justice in Ruth Bader Ginsburg that wouldn't retire to allow Barack Obama to replace her with a like-minded justice. So, you just on the whole country shouldn't be on the whim of 9 people, and in a way, I think the court has too much power. I think Congress needs to assert their power more, but unfortunately, we're so divided between the two parties that Congress hasn't been able to do anything. And that's just a reflection of the society. So the courts had to be that power, even though you're not supposed to be.
But at least, there's one thing I keep pushing here when I talk about politics and because in America, at least, for all, with policies and visions and anything that you talk about Donald Trump, voters of Donald Trump knew that he needs to get elected because it was a extreme opportunity for conservatives to appoint judges Donald Trump to appoint judges that would reflect the voters. In Brazil, that's one of my main disappointments with Bolsonaro. The 2 Supreme Court justices that he appointed was a disappointment. It was ridiculous. It was a complete shame. It was like if Merrick Garland was appointed by Donald Trump. That's literally what Bolsonaro did. Bolsonaro appointed a guy that worked for PT. That was and the right wing in Brazil is like, cool, Bolsonaro is great. I was like, how? It's like if Marilyn Garland, I know he's good, I bet he's an attorney general, but like if it was appointed by Donald Trump voters would be like, what the?
Yeah, well, I mean, that whole thing was, and shout out to my friend Tess Alexander, by the way, watching the 2 countries, 2 Americas.
Oh, thank you.
And that really, I think, was really, if you look at it, that's where this whole thing started, because that's another seat that really, in the grand scheme of things, got stolen, because they should have confirmed it the whole idea of, oh well, we're in an election year, we're not going to fill up that seat. That's nonsense. But literally, in the last year of Reagan's term in the '88, I believe that was when it wasn't Sandra Day O'Connor. I think it was Anthony Kennedy was the justice that was nominated back in 1988. I could be wrong, but there was a justice in the last year of Reagan's term, and they went through. Of course, justice Supreme Court nominations used to not be political. Justice would get confirmed with like the entirety of the body. Now it's so
It was Anthony Kennedy, 1988. I think that's what you're referring.
right. So the whole idea of well, let the voters decide, that was stupid. So, the fact that we have that we're in this situation with the court the way it is just very unfortunate.
And ironically, that's what I wish would have happened in Brazil, to be really honest. Because in Brazil, people love to criticize the Supreme Court. Every day here on the radio, on the left wing, now more on the right wing, it's like, the Supreme Court is a joke. Oh, the Supreme Court, they are, not representing the will of the people. But when it comes time to a president to appoint, people turn a blind side and they're like, oh, nice. We don't care. It's like, I wish they had the scrutiny of when the judges are appointed, like it happened with Kavanaugh and with Amy Coney Barrett. Well, in Brazil here, like André Mendonça and the other one I forgot. Like they were, I was disappointed. That was my biggest disappointment with Bolsonaro.
So,
Sergio Moro should have be put it there, and he didn't. I know he would betray Bolsonaro in the end, and then what Nick? Sorry.
So they don't have like confirmation hearings and stuff like
No,
that.
they have confirmation hearings, but nobody cares. Nobody watches. Like it's like a bureaucratic procedure. It's like even today on the radios, listening, and people talked about this. Oh, but they have to be appointed Senate, and even the panelists were like, oh, but that's a procedure that nobody cares. They're going to be confirmed. And the other problem is like the Supreme Court in Brazil. They're kind of like also they judge the politicians when there's like an investigation of politician. They have to be on a trial. They go to the Supreme Court. So they like the politicians want to kind of, especially the senators, want to kind of use this confirmation here as like, hey, I got your back, you got my back.
About to say that is way too much power for that court, because our court wouldn't operate like that. Like we would go to a whole separate court to try a politician who's committed a crime. Like you don't go to the Supreme Court for that stuff.
Oh yeah, here we come Supreme Court. I think for like the last 5 years, when you are found guilty on like a second higher court, you go straight to prison. That put Lula in prison, and then they revert that decision just 2 years later. That kind of free Lula. So in a span of 2 years, they went to one decision to the other.
Yeah, I mean that just sounds entirely dysfunctional.
Yeah.
At some point, I'll have to sit down and read like the Brazilian Constitution to see exactly what the delegated powers are.
Oh, the Constitution in Brazil has been changed so many times. The last one is 1988, and it's not like in America they have like few articles. In Brazil, you have it's like a book. It's like so long.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I know. In the wake of the decision Friday, there's a lot of people now who are saying that we should change the Constitution here, at least among certain circles. And I don't know if that would be wise, considering how there's ebbs and flows. How if you look at history really as a cycle, where sometimes conservatives have the power they have now, sometimes liberals will have the power that they have. Like look at the 30s when FDR was in charge. It won four straight elections. So it's always a cyclical thing, and you never know what parties are going to come and go.
Yeah, and it was funny that even there's sports matters that go to the Supreme Court in Brazil. There was a case that was like, it's called the Bubble Trophy for a team who won either 3 straight national championships or 6, in total. And then Flamengo should have 6 in total, but one of their titles were controversial because it was not officiated by the Brazilian Soccer Confederation. and then São Paulo won 3 straight. They wanted to claim the bubble trophy, but then they went to the Supreme Court because Flamengo said they got it. It was a whole mess. But just say okay. But real quick, some Brazilian topics. I know it's long and was a really crazy episode today with a lot of topics.
Yeah.
Rio Branco
Only
won.
podcast in the world where you can go from hockey to expansion to talking about the Supreme Court and Roe v. Wade. Find me another podcast anywhere in the world with the range of topics that we have here on Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports.
And also, we discuss 2 countries. I bring up the Brazilian perspective stuff. Talking about
Exactly.
this kind of, it can't
As
find.
Americans, we're so absorbed, self-absorbed, that we don't even think about what do people around the world think about this situation. So
Yeah. But real quick, my beloved Rio Branco won 1-0, but they played terribly because the other team was already on elimination mode. They didn't care about anymore. They played terribly. Even my commentator that was on my side, he was yelling at the players that he was so frustrated. He used to be a fan, and he's now my commentator, but he was so angry. But now he's on the. But we went to the next round. We went to the second round. We faced Grêmio Prudente, Mauá, and 15 de Jaú. The only thing that scares me is that 2 out of those 3 teams have really good managers, really good coaches. Those Grêmio Prudente and 15 de Jaú have coaches that last year's under 23 state championship, one was the title, one was the winner, and the second one it was the runner-up. So both know how to win on that division. So Rio Branco is going to have to overcome facing 2 teams that have 2 really top managers on that kind of division to go to the playoffs. So it's going to be a tough challenge, and Rio Branco has to get really like a really good midfielder ASAP, a number 10, and maybe one defender. But I feel like hopefully Rio Branco can advance. It's gonna start next Saturday at home, Decio Vita Stadium. Hopefully more fans show up. It was only 490 fans. I hope more fans shows up.
Yeah, that's not a lot. But hey, man, the further you get, though, more people will show up. So
that's the hope. That's the hope. I one day I hope to work in the marketing for Rio Branco, or maybe because I want to bring because like I just can't believe that in America I see minor league teams pulling up 1,000, 2,000 fans on a tournament that they don't care. Like it's not that they don't care, but like if you go to a Smokies or a Lookouts game, the fans that go there, they don't care about the outcome of the result of the season. It's not like, oh my God, the Lookouts were at the bottom of their division. They don't care, but they're still showing up in the game. They're still fill up seat and help the revenue of the team.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and you got and fans think about that. They're not showing up. I mean, they're not. You can't get better players.
Yes, that's the point. Like Brazil, especially lower divisions, they're gonna have to find ways to attract fans beyond only what happens on the pitch. They have to find creative ways to make people come to their event. Maybe with some sort of a promotion. I don't know, with some beer sale, something. They have to do something because five. They play. They lose every time Rio Branco plays. They lose money because the amount of revenue the fans bring is so small compared to the cost of day like a game day. With let's say people working in the stadium and ambulances, police, the operation cost is like pile up, and the revenue to cover those costs is like ticket fan because there's no of course there's like sponsorships, but there's no TV rights, there's no broadcasting rights, so they rely a lot on ticket sales.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no TV rights like there are here.
Yeah, it's like the minor leagues. Minor league team don't have like I guess TV rights. They don't have they don't get any money from broadcasting. So they have to. That's why they have. That's why they have to find creative ways to get people in the stadium, and they successfully did. I always bring up this case when I talk about, hear people in Brazil like, oh, why fans don't show up in the stadium? Sports fans don't care about the minor teams anymore. But like America, like for example, in America they care. If America cares, Brazilians will care. I don't know. That's why I feel like probably, hopefully, in the future something is done like that. Also, Brazilian Championship, Week 14. Palmeiras still on top. They tie on the road versus Avaí. I think it was natural for them to not win. They play on the road. They play with the reserves teams. They're going to play in Libertadores playoffs versus Cerro Porteño. And, fans are really mad at Rafael Navarro. He lost a bunch of goals. But Corinthians tie with Santos scoreless. Corinthians had a lot of players injured. They also play a lot of reserves because they're gonna have a huge game tomorrow for Libertadores. And Sao Paulo, I went to that game yesterday. Oh, thanks for watching, by the way. Okay, let's wrap up. Okay, thanks for watching the game. It was really cold, and Sao Paulo did not play well. They lost a bunch of opportunities. Rogério Ceni, the coach, was frustrated. So that's kind of the wrap in the Brazilian Championship. As I said, Libertadores playoffs starts tomorrow. Corinthians play at home versus Boca Juniors. I think they can win that game. I think they can, but it's going to be tough. Boca Juniors always is a team. There's always dangers in the playoffs, but I think they can win. Palmeiras playing Cerro Porteño. I think they're going to advance. I think even play on the road, they can win tomorrow on Wednesday. Flamengo and Atlético Mineiro, I don't know how they're gonna be, but I think they're favored to win, and that's kind of like my uh, takes on the Brazilian soccer, and and go straight to hot takes into Brazilian soccer. It's ridiculous that Atlético Mineiro front office is going to court because Gabriel Barbosa says that Flamengo fans are going to make hell to them. I cannot believe I saw that. I just can't believe.
So why exactly is this offensive?
Because he's inciting violence. Because he incites violence. It's crazy. Imagine in America, every time somebody said, "Oh, it's gonna be hell here," people, it's normal, right, Nick?
Yeah, it is normal. I mean, it's normal. Just like, I mean, there's been, back on like the whole Roe v. Wade thing. I mean, so many politicians are like, we're gonna go give them hell in November at the ballot box. We tell people we're gonna go give them hell when we go and vote. Like, let alone like go, an actual sporting event.
Yeah, I just couldn't believe. But as controversial he is, I think he took lightning. He was like, "Oh, they only doing that because they're scared of us." So he kind of like dodged the. I think, but it's just crazy that people, those front office people get so offended because their ego is just, I just think it's ridiculous. And Flamengo fans are gonna make hell because their rivalry with Atletico Mineiro is getting bigger by the day. So that's for me. That's my hot take of the week.
So really quick, so my hot take. I loved talking trash about the Florida Gators. So I want to very quickly here. Their recruiting is an abject disaster. Right now, do you realize they're ranked underneath teams such as Kentucky, Minnesota, Duke for 2023? They're Billy Napier's first class through June here is an absolute abject disaster. And what's hilarious is they lost out on a 4-star quarterback, Jalen Rashada, to Miami. And what's the more embarrassing about that is they had offered this guy $11 million in NIL money. He is just a 4-star, by the way. Allegedly, Tennessee paid Nico Amiavelli, a 5-star quarterback, $8 million. So anyway, Miami only gave him like 9.5, and he went to Miami. So why is Florida unable to close the deal on these recruits? There is something wrong in Gainesville. And if you go on any of the Florida sites, any of like Florida social media, they are in panic mode. They're like, oh my God, Dan Mullen didn't recruit that well. And now Billy Napier is supposed to be a recruiting god. He's not doing that so well. So we'll have to wait and see if this translates over to the field. Of course, Florida wasn't very good last year. And we'll see if they fall off this next year. But a Florida recruiting right now is a dumpster fire. It's hilarious. The fans are in full panic mode.
Oh yeah, I mean, and just think about it. That they started the season with such high hopes. They almost defeated Alabama, and them to fall like that is just crazy.
Oh, for sure. I just hope the Vols take care of them this year and just annihilate. I don't want to just beat them. I want to annihilate them.
You like this should be. I feel like the statement win that will get Josh Heupel, kind of like in another level. I think he has to make a statement win.
He has to win this game because otherwise any momentum is gone if we lose to Florida.
Because if you think about it, the best momentum a coach had in Tennessee in the last 10 years was when Butch Jones defeated Florida in 2016. I feel like that was the best momentum.
Absolutely. We've only beat them once since 2005. So we need to get that second win this year in the worst way. But I believe that is all the time that we have. So for Gus Tomazeli down in Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, thanks once again to Dylan Becker and Jason Wyrick, two of our dear friends from Rock Solid Sports, joining us. For all of them, I'm Nicholas Hill in Chattanooga, Tennessee, United States. You've been listening to episode 32 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. You guys have a great rest of your day.